You are in a workshop called Solely for Beginners, so if you're not, hopefully you're in the right place. And I wasn't going to mention this, but this is what I'm inspired to say. A couple years ago, I was at the conference, I got the inspiration that perhaps we needed something for beginners or newcomers, and to present somewhat of an overview of the teachings, because it can be a little intimidating if you haven't worked with it before, or a lot of the people here have studied this material for years. And so this workshop, I think, is a result of that seed that was planted quite a while ago. And also to let you know that that wherever you're at on the path in terms of learning the teachings, that it takes sometimes lifetimes, and that many people here have studied this material for years, and that we all welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I think we're just going to scoot over there.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay.
We had to change rooms.
That's okay. Go. I was just reviewing that a couple years ago I was here, and I had the seed idea to begin to maybe offer something for beginners, or newcomers to the Ageless Wisdom teachings. And so this workshop is the result of that. And so I think we'll begin today with an alignment, just a moment of silence so that we can all connect with one another. And I'd like to preempt that with our focus for our moment of silence. And by saying that in Agni Yoga, the book Agni Yoga by Helena Roerich, there's a statement, and I tried to get the book out of the library. It's what's been coming into me all day. And it's a statement that says, the great heart contains all. And I think the Christ, that is the Christ, and all of us are contained within that. And so when we close our eyes, let us all interconnect with that oneness and that all. And just, you can take as long as you like, and just open your eyes when you're ready. And let's connect soul to soul in this room. And with the great heart and the soul of all things. And when you're ready, just come back to the present. Can you hear me? Because I have a soft voice and we have the window open. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Welcome, Liz. First of all, the Ageless Wisdom, what is it? It's basically the wisdom of all ages, knowledge and wisdom collected by humanity over our entire history. And that's essentializing a great deal. The so-called Ageless Wisdom has been handed down over time. These are truths and wisdoms, like essential truths. So this is what Aldous Huxley called the perennial philosophy. It just goes on, and we add our wisdom to it. Humanity adds wisdom to it as we go. It was first recorded, they're not sure exactly about the timing of this, but it was first recorded by Patanjali in the anywheres from, it's been estimated, there was a really broad range, something like 10,000 BC to 200 BC. So it's, but it was first written down in something called Yoga Sutras, and also the Upanishads and the Veda. I think it's called the. A little nervous here. And I forgot the name of it. Somebody help me here.
Vedanta.
Yeah, Vedanta. And so it's more recent, in more modern history, it's been given to us through teachings guided by the Master Dwell Kul, who is also called the Tibetan. You've probably heard, for those of you that are very new to the teachings, you've heard the name DK or the Tibetan while you've been here. And he actually first guided these teachings through Helena Blavatsky and the Secret Doctrine, and later brought that down a little bit, closer to the ground, a little bit more accessible to humanity through Alice Bailey. And Alice Bailey was guided and wrote 24 books of esoteric philosophy and science and philosophy. And those are called the Blue Books, and this is what they look like. We've ordered some in the library. There's some left, I think. Not that many, actually, but they're easily ordered. And I'm going to be giving you a handout. And in the handout is the pamphlet from Lucis Trust where you can order Bailey books, and it lists all the books and a description if you need that. So actually, it began in the last 150 years, say, or 100 years, or how about 100? Actually, technically, about 125 years. These Ageless Wisdom has become more accessible to humanity and ordinary people. And it used to be in ancient times that we had the mystery schools, and all these mysteries and truths and this higher knowledge was reserved for the the exceptional or extraordinary people. And so, but now as we move into the Aquarian Age, this is becoming accessible to more ordinary, everyday people, and the attempt in the last 125 years was to bring that closer into the consciousness of humanity. So it's available to everyone, and it's just really a wonderful opportunity and gift that we can all become, avail ourselves of. So, it's a little bit of the history, just a light history of the Ageless Wisdom. There's several principles of the Ageless Wisdom, and these are just basic tenets that are truths that are evident in many religions. These are what are called essential truths, and the first truth being that all is one. And by this we mean that the entire universe is one system, and everything within that is interconnected, and we do know that to be true. I mean, obviously. So we've got the biggest picture is that all is one, And basically there's many, that is also referred to as God, or what we refer to as God, or the Tao. It's the largest whole, the source of all things. And within that there's many lesser systems, smaller systems. It's kind of like these wheels that keep getting smaller and smaller. So in the biggest, and that's a truth in everything, in all religions, that all is one is represented in all religions. So the interconnectedness of everything, or God's source. The second principle of the Ageless Wisdom teachings, and I'm going over what's in the booklet that I'll hand out to you, so you really, you don't have to take notes if you don't want to, and actually you can pass these around if you want to. Oops. Have you, is there enough? Or? Okay, great. The second principle, and I'll refer back to these in a little bit, but the second principle is all is energy. On the first page I have it, all is energy at different states of matter. And we do know that everything in this universe is alive. And even science has proven that. So that is a basic tenet. All is evolving. We're aware that everything has some type of evolution or progression. Everything is, there's a divine purpose or plan unfolding. There's nothing that's happenstance in this universe. Everything has a sequential, orderly process to it. It may seem chaotic at times, but in fact there is a purpose and plan. Everything is cyclic, all is just, and every living form has a soul. And there are an ascended or enlightened group of beings that actually guide the evolution of this planet. And it isn't just kind of a local group. There's also larger and larger groups that guide not only our planet, but our solar system and our universal systems. So there's, we get a lot of help from unseen realms. For those of you who have not heard the terms, some of the terms that are commonly used are esoteric, and that's as opposed to exoteric, meaning that there's an outer and an inner life that's happening. And much like a seed, that if you looked at a seed, you'd only see the outer shell, but there's a lot going on in the inside of that. There's life that animates that. And that's true with everything. So that the esoteric is that inner part. The exoteric is what is objective or what we see. And another contrasting terms would be metaphysical as opposed to physical. So metaphysical is what's beyond the physical reality. Physical is is what is apparent or obvious to us. And you also have maybe heard the word occult. And that's a word that often gets a really bad rap because of the last 2,000 years in the Piscean Age. There's been a lot of negative connotation to that word, but technically that word means spiritual. So again, it reflects the inner. as opposed to the outer shell. So these are some terms that you often hear in the Ageless Wisdom teachings. They're referred to over and over again. Let's see. Okay, so having laid a few terms here as well, we're going to take just a really quick look at cosmology. Basically, cosmos means an orderly, harmonious, systematic universe. That's how it's defined in the dictionary. So, thereby implying, of course, that there is order, there is a plan, everything is not chaos, it's actually perfection. And that we just need to get more in touch with the natural harmony of things. Our universe is made up of billions of galaxies, and we're in a galaxy, for those of you who aren't astronomers or scientists, we're in a galaxy called the Milky Way galaxy, and there's actually, I think there's, I don't know how many, 200 billion stars in our particular galaxy, so it's a huge, huge galaxy. But it's a dot. Our solar system is just a little dot in the Milky Way galaxy. And then when you think of it, that the universe is made up of billions of those galaxies. So, I mean, now talk about getting a reality check. I just think, keeping that context really keeps you, keeping things in right proportion. So the universe, they say, is about 12 to 14 billion years old, and our solar system is only 4.5 billion years old. So we're relatively young, even as a solar system. And human beings have only existed really for about the last few million years. So, when you start to put all that in perspective, I often refer to those little details when I'm trying to get some perspective on life. It makes your life, really not to trivialize our life. Each life is extremely important, but at the same time, sometimes we place too much emphasis, on the day-to-day. And our modern history is only 4,000 to 10,000 years old. So what we, kind of is tangible to us, and what we are kind of basing our reality on is just the last 4,000 to 10,000 years. We're in the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy, and in the summer, I believe it's in the summer, you can look down through like the constellation Sagittarius, and you would be looking toward the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And that's called the galactic center. So that just gives you a little bit of the big picture. I think you also, if you study the Ageless Wisdom, you'll commonly hear the terms macrocosm and microcosm. Macro meaning whole, the big picture, the whole perspective, and microcosm is the unit. And everything in they're divine patterns, and they exist in every life form. And they're replicated in every life form, whether it's a plant, a mineral, a human being. We're identified with the human pattern quite a bit. However, everywhere you look, there's the same pattern. And so in some ways it's been made quite easy for us to see God again and again and again in all these different kind of mandalas that exist. And so by looking at things macrocosmically, or from a cosmological point of view, we can see, through the big picture, we can often learn a lot about ourselves, and vice versa. by studying about ourselves, one of the axioms is man, know thyself. If you study yourself, then you get into closer relationship with God because you actually, you are a replica of God. So, one of the first essential truths of all spiritual teachings is that God manifests as a triplicity. And I don't know what your if any of you have studied religion, but that's true in all religions, is that God manifests in three aspects. And so there is what we call spirit, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, or there's all these different ways of looking at it. And I like to look at it, for those of you who haven't studied religion, there's different ways you can look at it. You can look at it from a more linear point of, or a vertical point of view, and say that here's spirit and here's matter. And through the relationship, actually, the soul is created. So the soul is the product of their union. And the spirit is fire, so that's the essence. That's the core of our being, of our central nature. And in order for us to materialize in matter, spirit has to enter matter, and soul is a mediating principle between those. So, and this is true with every life form, not just human beings. So whether it's a plant or whatever life form, there is the essence, and there is the outer appearance. And I mentioned like the seed, which is a really good, I think, good way of looking at it. You can also look at an atom or a cell, and you can look at it this way. You know, there's this core, there's this outer, and that's the obvious expression or the material expression of a form. Then there is the core, which is the central, the essence or the animating principle, the life-giving principle of a form. And there's that which lies in between, which is really the soul, or what we refer to as the soul, or the mediating principle. And as we all know, we're so much more aware of our form. It's just so easy to, we grow up, as in our early development, it's about developing that form. So, we're habitually used to developing this form aspect, and by the time, unless we have a really rare and unique upbringing, we're not always fostered to look at this other aspect of ourself. We're focused on the material aspect of ourself. But spirituality is about, I think one of the biggest fallacies that I've learned, something that I had to learn that I'll share with you, for those of you who haven't figured that out either, is that in all the striving for spiritual enlightenment, so to speak, we think that we're going towards something, that we're actually acquiring something. And the truth is we are that already. We just need to clear away that which stands in the way of what we are already. So we're all gods. So it isn't a matter, I always, I've spent a lot of years studying and striving, and it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't about acquiring something, it was already right there inside. And it's more about letting that out, exposing that which is within.
Self-realization.
Yes, absolutely, Gord. So, and this is true too. Another way of looking at this kind of essence core thing is our solar system. If you look at the sun as the center of our solar system, this is the fiery core, this is the spirit, the central point of our solar system. And it is, there's actually a cosmic entity, or it's called the solar logos. So this particular solar system is infused by an entity that that sun represents, and we all are animated and enlivened by that sun within the system. So it's another example of how the source, there's the source, and how it extends out. And we have all these planets, and as they're moving around the sun, they're all moving around the sun, and we're all enlivened by the sun. And so that just another example of that same pattern working out. Another fact of the Ageless Wisdom teaches us that there's 7 planes of existence. And we can look at that from many, many different, it's called septenary systems. And it's true in many, many different respects. But I think the one that's most familiar to most of us is the chakra system in the human system. We have the planes that we work with. Ooh, whoops. Okay. Okay. There's oh my gosh. Well, it says erasable, but okay. So God expresses through 3 aspects, and also via 7 planes. And so I think we'll look at this first just as the physical plane. So we have the physical. And then what's...
I'm sorry, would you say that one more time, just so I'm up with you? You started out by saying God manifests in 7 ways, is that what you said?
There's 7 manifestations, 7 planes of manifestation of God.
Okay. For just a second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. With keeping this as simple as we can, because there's a lot to that, because there's 7 major planes called cosmic planes, and our world is really functioning on just the cosmic physical plane, okay? And there's 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane that we're more familiar with. Well, we're not familiar with the upper 2, but so there's really only 5, the lower 5 planes of the cosmic physical plane that most of us are even in touch with, and most of humanity's really only in touch with a few levels of that. So let me just talk about the cosmic physical plane, okay? It's what we're familiar with. And we have the physical plane, which is the dense physical plane. And then there's what's called the astral plane, which is more of the what's called the astral plane. So that's like in a human being, that would be like the emotional plane of your being, or the solar, what's called the solar plexus. It's related to the solar plexus. And then there's the mental plane. I wasn't going to go into this, but we will. Whoops. Then there's the mental plane, and there's actually 2 levels of the mental plane. And so there's the lower mental and the upper mental, and then there's the spiritual plane, or what's called the spiritual kingdom. And then above that there's the other even higher planes called the like the planetary and cosmic planes of the earth plane, of the earth. So we won't go into that too much. I just wanted to let you know that there are 7 planes to our existence, and it corresponds to the 7 chakras in the body. And so this would be the root chakra, the solar plex, sacral centers, and solar plexus. The heart would be along this line. Then there's the lower and higher mental, and it keeps going up. There's all different planes of our being. I think I've totally confused you all now. Sorry about that. But anyways, we weren't going to go into that too much. I don't know what we're going to do with that. That'd be good, Karen. Well, thank you. Goodness.
Press hard.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Yeah, it is. I didn't want to. Okay, let's talk about the soul, which is the mediating principle between the physical form, or the outer expression, and the essence of ourselves. And simply put, the nature of the soul is light. So it is. This mediating principle is light at different frequencies. Thanks, Kim. I don't know if that- Okay. So this is the light of, there's light manifests in many dimensions, the light of love. There's all kinds of light. But I think the thing to realize that as we move from the objective or the material self to the more of our essence, we're getting into subtler and subtler dimensions, so that it's not the coarse, unrefined part of our nature, but we're actually going into a more refined, where we're developing virtues and qualities that are more refined in our nature, so that and it's really obvious if you see a savage type person and they're aggressive and have very coarse, dense qualities, where someone who's enlightened has radiance and has lightness of being. So that's kind of simply put, that's how you can differentiate between someone who is soul-filled or enlightened and someone who is still working on the dense physical more. Anyone who has intelligence is beginning to bring light into their system, to have the light of knowledge or the light of wisdom. And so there's always that evolution. I'm going to talk a little bit, like I say, we're trying to I've given you a couple pages of qualities, or at least a page of qualities, just a few samples of soul qualities, and which you all can study this later, or read this later, and it's on page 6, and also some initial effects of soul contact, such as increased energy or stimulation and so forth. One of the, I think a really important lesson in the Ageless Wisdom is about evolution. And we mentioned that one of the tenets is that everything is evolving. And if any of you had been to some of the previous lectures, for instance, Philip during the pre-conference, Philip Lindsay was talking about how we involuted. We've just passed the midway point of our involution and evolutionary cycle. And so now we've just passed the densest point collectively. So now we're headed to a more, we're moving toward more subtlety. I mean, just a little teeny bit past past that. But that's why this is a very auspicious and a big turning point in history, which we'll talk about in a minute. There's many states of evolution, and I think one of the most important things for us to remember as individuals is that we've all been at all the stages that lie before. So if we see, if we're working with somebody who's quite dense or coarse in their vibration, we've been there. We've traveled that path, and so instead of judging our fellow man for where they're at, realizing that everyone, has to go through those different stages. And I think that it's helpful to understand the stages in our evolution so that we can have compassion for our fellow man, depending upon our brothers and sisters, depending upon where they're at on the path of evolution. The pre-path, or the what we call the survival state, is the early states, and it focuses on, basic needs and obviously survival. And so it's a very self-protectful and defensive state of evolution. And that's naturally so. You wouldn't expect someone at that, if you don't have food or you don't have shelter, and you're grappling for the basics, you certainly are not thinking about enlightenment. That's just not where you're at yet. It's easy to get frustrated when humanity isn't thinking thoughts of peace and, love and all this. But if we really embrace the idea that everyone is evolving and that they're acting out naturally for their state of evolution, it does give, I think it lends to more of an acceptance and more of an attitude of working with where we find our fellow beings. On the path of approach, which is called it's also called the Hall of Ignorance, it's usually the birth of moral consciousness. So something does happen. There's a bit of an attention to spirituality, but it's more of an entertainment than it is actually where someone is really applying knowledge. It's more of a phenomenon state in evolution, or where someone's oriented to phenomenon, and probably this is where a lot of the religions such as black magic and a lot of that comes out of that state of evolution. A lot of fear based to that stage of evolution. And before, even in the the survival state, there's a lot of fear based to it. On the path of approach, usually God is money. So the person is still down here on the physical plane quite a bit and hasn't really lifted themselves to the point, evolved to the point where that's not the most important thing anymore. So there's a natural tendency towards materiality. And so on, and you can read this, and I've given you a lot of detail, or some detail, about these different evolutionary paths for a human being. And we're going to have a question and answer period, so if any of that is of great interest to you, we can go into that. I also have listed an evolutionary timeline with the ages. I'm an astrologer, or try to be. So I've given you some idea of our evolution as the evolution of mankind through the ages, and it's kind of a timeline for your reference. Which brings us kind of to the world today. How are we doing on time? What time is it?
4:15.
Oh, okay, so we're doing good. Okay, so the world today, for those of you who aren't aware of that, I think most of you are, we are in the process of entering the Aquarian Age, and it's a very auspicious time in the history of mankind. It's been long awaited for, so it's probably the most auspicious time in our history. And it is a time when humanity will become aware of their interconnectedness and their connectedness to Source or all of creation, and stand in their rightful place as a bridge between God, so to speak, or the all, and actually between the spiritual kingdom of this planet and the lesser kingdoms, such as the mineral and plant kingdoms. And referring back to the septenary systems we talked about, there's actually 7 kingdoms in nature, and mankind stands at the midway point in all of those kingdoms. So below, in a sense below us, is are the animal, plant, and mineral kingdoms, which we are responsible for. Mankind is the stewards or the caretakers of all kingdoms which lie below us. And so we're all, I'll tell you, I'm backing up here a lot because I'm remembering all the things I didn't say. Okay. I mentioned there's 7 planes of God's existence. There's also 7 streams, divine streams, and these are called rays. And so you might hear the term, what is your ray, or what ray line? And there's 7 primary streams that God expresses through. So these are, they possess certain qualities. And each of the kingdoms in nature is representative of one of these streams as well. So humanity relates as a whole to the 4th ray, which is the middle stream of the 7. And so we're a bridging kingdom. And we're responsible for that which lies below us. And we're also bridging upward to connect to the higher realms, so the spiritual realms or the cosmic, hopefully someday. So I'll interject that. The sign Aquarius is the sign of the brotherhood of man, or mankind. And so in this age we will be, it's been long awaited for, that humanity will take its rightful place as a bridging unit between these kingdoms in nature. I think that there's certain things that, just some basic, for those of you that are new to the Ageless Wisdom, there's many different resources that are available to you, but of course it begs the question, what can I do, where I'm at? And I think there's some very practical things that we can all do. One is to be loving, to practice loving kindness. That's one of the easy. It's not so easy as Heidi had said today. It's not as easy as it sounds. But if we simply can do those things, you can go and you can study the teachings and spend your entire lifetime acquiring knowledge. And if you don't have love in your heart, it doesn't make it that useful. So I think the best service that we can give is to first love ourselves, which is part of that. Accepting ourselves, realizing the part that each of us plays in this divine plan. that if we are extensions and expressions of God, I was reading in somewhere in the Ageless Wisdom, and I can't quote this, but it just really struck me. It said that the solar logos, which is the center of our solar system, the kind of the animating source of our entire system, delights in each individual. And I just thought, oh, how beautiful, that each of us, that he finds joy in our being and wants nothing more than for us to express ourselves in our fullness. So, I think that when we study, for instance, astrology, the rays, numerology, whatever it is, these are tools that we can use to understand ourselves and assist us in getting in deeper alignment with our divine nature, so that we can express more fully that which we are in reality or in our core. I think a second thing that we can do that's very practical is to respect life and respect one another, but respect all life forms. So seeing everything as a God, the God in everything, and holding that sacred, and being truthful, and trying to live in accordance with our own nature. I think it's a very good practice to think in terms of the whole. It's hard to, but if you just kind of contemplate when you have the opportunity to think in terms of the big picture instead of our little, constantly, habitually thinking about our little world, our little stuff, every day. It kind of helps us detach from our own sometimes misidentification and so forth, and gets us identified with what's real. That's been very helpful in my evolution. And of course, meditating, praying, serving, the use of mantras. I've put a bookmark in this booklet that has the Great Invocation, and this is a mantra that's been given to all of humanity, and it's for use in the Aquarian Age, much like the Lord's Prayer was used quite a bit in the Piscean Age. And this mantra is very powerful, and just said daily could be of great service to this planet. It aligns the three aspects of the planet and puts us into right relationship. So these are very simple, practical things that you could do if you just say that from your heart with intention to be aligned. It's very helpful. Practicing harmlessness, this is one that the Tibetan mentions a lot. And of course, the source of harmlessness and right speech and all the other virtues that he talks about is coming from this place of loving kindness. So, what Heidi had to say today was, really quite beautifully underscored how important that is. And I think more important than acquiring knowledge, I have second ray in my constitution, and they usually like to acquire knowledge. So, I'm speaking to myself when I say that, because I have a lot of books and I love to read and surround myself with knowledge, but that isn't the most important thing. And the Tibetan says that over and over again, The last page in this little handout that I've given you has resources. And for those of you who are not familiar with some of the metaphysical courses and resources that are available, I've listed those for you. And places that you can go. There's many, many more. These are just a few, basic ones. And also some introductory books. I listed there, but there's many more. I mean, certainly it's not limited to that. There's a book in the library, and apparently I brought these with me, and I guess most of them have been sold, but this is a really good introductory book. It was one of the students of Michael Robbins' PhD program, Leonie McKinnon Hodgson, I think it's said. I use this a lot in teaching. It's a great teaching tool, but it's also great for somebody who is introductory. And I think there's a couple copies left in the bookstore. If you want one and they're gone, let me know, and I'd be happy to. I've been working with Leonie. She lives in Australia, and I could get one for you. But this really touches on, pretty much a broad spectrum of all topics, and also gets into a little bit of the astrology and the rays, and helps you sort a little bit of that out. So that's I found a very useful tool as well.
Would you define Shambhala?
I'm sorry?
Would you define Shambhala?
Shambhala? Sure. Like, that's so easy. Okay, I can do it in really common language, okay? When we talked about everything has a spirit and a body and a soul, remember the divine Trinity? Okay, the spirit of our planet Earth, the spirit is Shambhala. Okay, so, and that spirit aspect is also called the will aspect, and where the will of God is known is Shambhala. Okay, so in our planetary scheme, that's basically the spirit of our whole planet, and the soul of our planet is called, or the spiritual aspect is called the hierarchy. And the hierarchy represents the soul aspect of our planet. And then, of course, the body is the planet Earth. So we have planet Earth, and Shambhala represents the spirit aspect. And so the middle principle is called the hierarchy. And hierarchy acts, these are where the enlightened beings of the planet, the ascended beings, reside, and most of them, they say that Shambhala is located in the Gobi Desert, but it's in the etheric. So when we look at planet Earth, just like a human being has a physical body and we have an energetic body around our body, planet Earth is a physical, dense globe, but around that it has an etheric body or an energetic body. And Shambhala is somewhere in the etheric body of our planet, near the Gobi Desert, in that area. And hierarchy, a lot of the members of hierarchy, they say, reside in the Himalayas in Tibet and Shagatsi, in the Himalayas, or Himalayas, whatever. And there's, you might hear the word Chohan, and there's these seven streams, these seven life streams, which are called rays of God, or the divine rays. There's a Chohan, or a head of each of those streams coming. It comes from the will of God, and then it differentiates as it comes down into the earth. And so these seven streams are the differentiation of God as it comes, like a pyramid down into a prism. And there's so many reflections of these seven rays, or these seven planes of existence. There's, seven primary colors. There's seven primary colors in a rainbow or a prism. It's just reflected over and over and over again, and I've listed a lot of the correlations to that. But in the hierarchy, there's a head of each one of those streams, and you might hear the word ashram also. So these chohans are the head of these ashrams, are kind of these centers of each of those streams. It's one body, but it's like I describe to my students, it's like a corporation, in a sense, that there's a head, an executive branch, and then here is the management branch, and it's divided into 7 divisions. And then it filters down, and each of us is our contribution, our point of service, and our point of being is within one of those streams. So, what other questions do you have? Sure.
A minute ago, you said that the Great Invocation was used to align the 3 aspects of the earth.
The 3 aspects of God, the Divine Trinity, back to the will, which is the spirit aspect, the love wisdom, which is the second or the soul aspect, and the intelligence, light of intelligence, which is the third. And also to seal, one of the lines in the Great Invocation is to seal the door where evil dwells. So by using this, we're actually invoking integration and light, and sealing off this dense aspect of humanity that's, had been, we're just actually revealing more of the light, bringing it more into alignment with that instead of the density.
Jan, would you care to comment on the practical application of astrology in our trying to understand our nature?
Sure. Actually, there's different tools that we've been given that some of them, I think that the rays are more remote, and astrology is kind of a step-down version of that, because when these, from our source, our universal source, or from God, or whatever you want to call it, the energies come down through the stars, and actually come then down through the planets, and then down to, and through to Earth. So there's like there's a energetic stream, you want to say. So that the 7 rays are actually more essential. It's behind the planetary energies. But those divine rays come through the planets and then radiate toward Earth. And so within our solar system, basically, there's this, obviously I'm not erasing because it's too hard, but I like to think in terms of greater and greater wholes, Phil. I can't get this stuff off here.
There's actually, it appears to be a pad of paper behind the dry erase board, and set that down, or maybe you could write on sheets of paper.
Oh. Okay. I'll do that. Well, how smart of you, Jeremy. Okay. One of the ways I like to think about us, okay, say this is you. You're here, okay, and you are part of humanity, right? You might be first part of a tribe, or I'm going to get back to the astrology piece, but here you are. You're part of a family or a tribe. You're part of a nation. You're living in a certain nation. You're part of humanity. You're part of planet Earth. You're part of the solar system. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger until you've got the universe way out here, okay? So really, I think what astrology is kind of a step-down version of these, the energy of the universe. And it keeps stepping down and stepping down and stepping down. And so within our little solar system, say if we're in this smaller section, so if we're dealing with smaller pieces of the pie, so to speak, within the solar system, our solar system is holistic. in a sense that everything within the solar system is interrelated to everything else. And large bodies of energy, such as planets, radiate and have effects on lesser bodies of energy, such as individual units. And we know that the sun and the moon have effects. We can measure the effects of the sun and the moon. We know that the moons rule the ebbs and tides of the ocean, that, we can sit out in the sun and get a sunburn. We know that, we can measure them. But I think I know that we will learn, and we will learn to measure the relation, the radiance of these planets, which are heavenly bodies, and their effects on us. So in an individual horoscope, basically what's happening is that, not sure how it's done, but when you're born, there's a certain resonance to that blueprint, that pattern on that day and that location. There's a certain mandala that you as a being have resonance to. So not only within that mandala is the opportunity needed for your wholeness, for greater wholeness, but also the imprint of everything else that you've been resonant to up to that point. So it's actually a blueprint. And it's a lot about astrology. Is that get close to what you're asking, or would you like more?
I was going to kind of add
Sure.
to that a little bit and say that this blueprint that one resonates to when you're born is a function of the particular energies that are present from what
Mhm.
stars are most dominant at that particular time and place.
Yeah, that plus your own already acquired resonance. Like I said, each of us is a part of a divine expression. Okay, so at a given time, that particular expression is prominent, and because we have resonance to it, we might be, choose that time to be born. And it also contains within that our opportunity. What is our opportunity to become? Because all of evolution is about becoming more and more whole. So instead of being this little teeny middle of the pie or the concentric circles that we talked about and just being focused there, it's about getting outside of that and living in a bigger and more whole, becoming more whole, more full, more embodying more of the great, the universal pattern. And so usually when I do charts and things, I basically, what an astrologer is doing is defining those energetic patterns in a person's life. What patterns, what energies are you in harmony with? What energies are you working with, maybe? What limitations might you have? Where are you blind? There's blind spots in your nature. So what of those energies are you resonant with? What are you not? And so there's this kind of, there is your natal chart, or what's called a birth chart, is a picture, actually, of your pattern, that's in operation. But that's a fixed pattern, so it's kind of a picture of the heavens at that time. But where the planets are constantly moving and forming relationship to that sets up certain events or timing in the life, certain unfoldments, if you will, or opportunities for unfoldment. It doesn't always, we don't always take advantage of all of our opportunities. But in the beginning we talked about how everything is perfect, in absolutely perfect order. And so even all the misidentifications and chaos or problems or pain or whatever we go through is really part of this effort to unfold our fullness, to bring us into a deeper relationship with God, and to unfold our godliness, so that we can be more fully express who we are already. And so we can bemoan that, or we can begin to look at that as opportunities to be more of who we are. And really, even in esoteric healing, and this is one of the other, I wrote down some simple truths according to Jan. They're basically things that I've learned the hard way that I might save you some time and effort. All pain, all confusion, all chaos in your life is a result, and all illness as well, is a result of wrong identification. So if you're identified with your physical aspect, with the obvious, the material aspect of yourself, usually all of this unhappiness in the world and stuff is through our identification with that instead of who we truly are. Took me a long time to figure that out, and I still, you learn that every day of your life, but the Tibetans said that all disease is wrong alignment. It's not being aligned with the soul. So all disease is a result of misalignment. So if all your energy was in perfect harmony, and so what is illness? It's our cue. It's a communication system. It's telling us where something's not right, where it needs to get in alignment. Yeah, Liz?
How do you reconcile that, though, with possibly an illness that you brought over, disease from a karmic situation from, let's say, a previous lifetime?
And yeah, there's karma, but again, karma is the result of misalignment. So so essentially, the misalignment was there, from previous times. You've set something in motion. Karma is nothing more than, the effect of energy that we've set in motion, coming back to us. Well, from our previous misalignments, then it's resulted in karmic misalignments as well. And just one second, Andrea. I just wanted to say make sure we get this out. The other, I think, through all the students that I've had the joy to work with, one of the biggest misconceptions and fallacies that I want to clear away is that, and I see this over and over and over again, that's why I want to say it out loud, and that is to speak to duality. The duality, which often we think that the spiritual world is here, and here's the material world, okay? And we often revere those who maybe are spiritual leaders, or, like they have some. The truth is, they're not separate. And we need to start living with an attitude that is the one. That the material world is spiritual, is God in a lower manifestation, but it's all divine. It is all divine. So, I've worked with a lot of students that were, say, accountants. Let's give you that example. And they think, well, gosh, how could, you're so spiritual, and, because I'm an astrologer or something. But that is such a misconception. And the truth is, it's about being, I think it was Rajneesh one time that said, be a god, changing a baby's diapers. Whatever you're doing, do it well and be who you are. This is the expression of God. God expresses through accounting, through the organization, through every form there is. And let's take the example of being an accountant. It's about ethics. It's about ordering. It's about using numbers as numbers are, and so it's your perception it's our perception in the Piscean age to have these separate. You know, we've got the spiritual and the material. Okay. But now it's our job to see the divine in everything material, see the sacred in all things, and also to lift the material world into the spiritual kingdom. So they're all one. You know, they've been one all along. It's just that we haven't been looking at it that way. I think that's an important, something very important to bear in mind. Yes, Andrea?
My question was back to, you said that all disease is misalignment.
Mm-hmm.
What about a situation where a person is born with a condition? Say a child is born retarded, deaf.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of my sister, you know, cerebral palsy.
Mm-hmm.
These are not diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Would this more likely be a karmic thing, or?
Well, it could be karma, and it could be good karma. You know, we have to think about that. Some of the most beautiful teachers in the world are, you know, people like your sister who have cerebral palsy, and all that they teach those around them is just incredible. I had this one woman I worked with for quite some time, a woman whose daughter gave birth to a child who was severely retarded, and you know, I said from the beginning, Joan, you know, that baby is probably, you know, might be sacrificing to teach you all. You know, this might be the adept in the family, you know, and things aren't as they appear to be, so we have to be careful about how we look at things and not just assume, you know. So it might be her good karma, your good karma, you know, to have experienced someone in that position. Does that make sense?
It's the best explanation I've ever heard.
Good.
Because I had never thought of it as good karma for her. But
Yeah, it might be her. You know, it could be that she's chosen to sacrifice for the good of the greater number.
She certainly had a very positive, profoundly positive effect on many, many people.
I'm sure, and that's usually often the case. Yeah. Anybody else? Questions? Or? Yes, Pat.
Over the years, the Alice Bailey books were written. What was that time span?
Okay, I'm going to guess. I think it was 1919 to 1949. Does anybody want to correct me, Barbara? Do you?
It might have been the early 50s, I think, the last ones, but yeah.
Okay, she died in the month that I was born, so I do know that she died in October of 49. I think that they did 25 or 30 years work together, so that's where I was coming up with the 1919 to 1949. And if you want to learn more about Alice Bailey's life, you can read a book called The Unfinished Autobiography, which is really excellent. It gives you a lot of history. And there's this wonderful book about HPB, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, by Sylvia Cranston, and the book is called HPB. And it is just really a must-read, and it gives you a lot of the history, and it also, the masters that worked through Helena Blavatsky and how that works, you know, what their aims and intentions were, because the idea was to bring the, actually with the earth, are we about timed out or what?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, so one of the other things that's happening energetically on the earth, okay, so here's our globe, and we have, across, of course, the equator. And what's been happening as we become, you know, on Earth, trying to become integrated, you know. So we're integrating as individuals, but we're integrating as a planet as well. And one of the efforts has been to bring the East, the teachings from the East to the West. So we're bringing things, and we're bringing the Western science over to the East. There's also been an effort to bring the north, which represents the divine masculine, and the southern latitudes representing the divine feminine, and integrating those. So there's this effort of kind of integrating the earth, and you can see this, like most of the countries that have, money, science, and all of that has mostly come from the northern latitudes. So there's been this really, like the mind, the masculine energy. And in the south, you always think of Spanish individuals, the hearts, they're known for their heart and stuff, so that's the divine feminine. So there's this, huge integrative process going on multi-dimensional levels, not only with us individually, but, in the with the planet. And it's very interesting to study that as well. So, anyone else? Think of anything? Anything you can ask? Sure.
Go ahead. Yeah.
What are these dates, like 1942 and 1965? They were brought up constantly, and there were a lot of dates like 2000, 2117, and
Right. Yeah, they were brought up a lot. You're right, John. These were actually meetings of the spiritual kingdom, the hierarchy of this planet. Had what are called conclaves, where they have periodic meetings. Like I say, it's like a corporation who every once in a while has this big meeting. Let's all get together and look at the divine plan. So basically, the early dates that were mentioned were those meetings. How can we, what's going to be the plan ahead? How can we, make the most efficient use of humanity in the coming years, and how can we bring about this integration process more efficiently? The date 2000, what is it, 2117. Yeah, 2117. This is one that is often brought up related to, that's the date that we're moving into the Aquarian Age, but you can see signs of the Aquarian Age everywhere. We started, the Aquarian Age, the Industrial Age, this whole last 100 years has been incredible. We have never made this type of a leap forward so quickly. And even in the music, electricity. Electricity is a symbol of Aquarius. The sign Aquarius is a sign. It's a sign that rules the central nervous system and the body. So it rules all this interconnectedness. So the internet, computers, everything related to the information age and so forth was related to the incoming of the Aquarian Age. But a lot of people are using that date as the technical new age. It's all around us. I mean, everywhere you go, you can see more examples of our interconnectedness. And I think the internet was just the huge, but the 1975 date, that was another year of an impact from higher realms onto humanity.
Well, if we follow that up a little bit more, astrologically, does that mean that at that day, 2117, that's the time when the constellation of Aquarius will actually be risen over the complete in the sky? I mean, what I'm talking about.
That's up for debate. There is some debating about that, but yeah, I think generally speaking, that's probably what they're referring to.
Now,
yeah.
by that time
But we're definitely under the effects of it right now. I mean, it's all around us, and just this whole, the new age, the wave of consciousness and people interested in that, and just humanity waking up. I mean, there's signs of the Aquarian Age all around us. What else was I going to say about that? Oh, and also it's the externalization. They're bringing up certain dates related to what they call the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. Basically, once humanity has, kind of elevated closer to the spiritual kingdom and prepared the world for the spiritual kingdom, it can begin to actually externalize on earth. But in a sense, earth has to be prepared for that. So we are in a process of preparing for that.
So how does this affect the alignment? Do our bodies have to change in alignment
Yeah.
to prepare for this? And if there's an internal struggle not to do that, is that one of the causes of disease?
Absolutely. I mean, basically, all of our involutionary tendencies, where we're not in alignment with our energetic body, with the etheric body of the planet, with the movement that's happened. These things are all happening multidimensionally. Everything's happening all at the same time. So yes, any time that we're resisting moving forward, it's like staying in a bad relationship because it's comfortable. Those types of things. Staying at a job we can't stand because, I've got, insurance and, that types of thing. The new, in fact, what was his name? Jose was talking about that this morning. This Agni, it's like the path of fire, which is the new age. The Aquarian Age is related to the will of God. In the Piscean Age, we received this middle principle, which was the love and the wisdom of God through the Piscean Age. And through Moses is when we received the intelligence aspect. So these are the three aspects of God, and we're preparing to receive, that Shambhala or that will aspect. And part of the practice of Agni Yoga is practicing the path of daring. So that means that instead of staying in our comfortable, secure place, we're reaching out for that which, it's scary. But you got to jump off, and you've got to don't be complacent and stay the same. That's not what this is about. We're not here just to stay the same. We're here to evolve. So what can we do to foster our forward movement? What stands in the way of our fullness? And actually kind of assertively and aggressively going, actually taking your sword out and cutting through and, jumping off into those things. I mean, actually after a while, once you practice this Agni Yoga, which is the path of daring, and after you do it a few times, you actually start to enjoy it. Believe it or not, it becomes exciting. It's like, okay, but as soon as you're alerted that, and this thing of listening to our inner self, because, you can go to an astrologer, you can go to a psychic, you can do all these things, go to someone who's enlightened, and invariably your inner self, the master in you, has already told you these things a million times. And why did it take paying somebody to tell you what you already knew to get you to, maybe create some movement? If that's what it takes, great. But the point being that listen to your inner self and take those steps that are necessary to create more life, more fullness, and I wish you well in that. Just one last thing. If anybody needs to, needs resources or doesn't know how to find somebody in their area to study with or has questions, I'm open, and I'll give you my email. My email address is in the package that you got, and my name is Jan Detrich, and I'm just happy to help you in any way I can. If I can help you with anything, just write me. Okay? Yes.
In that case.
It is on the list.
I just drank all stuff.
It's on the list, Peg, but
Oh, it is, okay. Okay.
are you going to be here?
Hi, Lena. You're welcome. Good, dear.
Uta told me about the reading to her yesterday, and you mentioned me.
I did.
And I wondered if it would be the right thing to do to give me a reading with my chart, because I was really very surprised. So
I'd be happy if you
have the time.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. I don't know how much time I'll have, but why don't we take a few minutes with it? And then if we want to correspond or whatever, we could do that as well. Okay, so maybe,
you don't feel like you will have the time for a whole reading?
I don't know, I just don't know, because now we're amidst the whole conference, so I don't, there's not that much time, right, it's hard. But you have my email too, and you and I can be in touch. Actually, when we were in the pre-conference is when I really got a strong message about you. I don't know if you heard what I was saying, but I felt very strongly about you and children and teaching, and I was sharing that with Uda.
Yes, I am teaching, but teaching children, that was surprising. I never thought of that.
Spiritual teachings and so forth. Yeah. But let's take some time for this. And I was trying to think what's going on tomorrow. Right now I'm a little bit, I don't know.
Okay.
But can we talk tomorrow? And let me look at the schedule, and I'll come up with a couple of times that might be good, and maybe we can just sit down together for a short time. Okay. Okay. You're welcome.
For dinner with us?
I don't know. I might.
Well, we're supposed to.
Leave soon. Yeah. Right now.
We're going to go to our 178 because we got all 3 cars up there, and that'll be enough to haul us home. So we'll see you in a few.
So now we'll go out for our tea.
We're disappointed, but that's okay.
Oh, no. Why?
Oh, I can do better.
Well, good. It was, I think, once you got warmed up, you started flying. And, today,
I just recorded that.
Did all this research, and he asked the teacher if he could
Yeah.